What's up, millionaires? It's Alexander Victor here with another moment of financial zen. It's been one hell of a weekend. We're looking to going into another crazy market week. This is the recording of call number 6 I did last week. A lot of good information to put out, a lot of good information to put out here with the oncoming run up to the crypto rally in 2021 and all the reasons why this year is going to be absolutely historic for cryptocurrency. I'm covering inflation, I'm covering gold, the debasement of the US dollar, I'm covering fiat currency, I'm covering reserve currency, what the new one will be. I'm covering Ethereum, blockchain, Dogecoin, Bitcoin, all the good stuff. So why don't you just go ahead and stick around to the end? And of course, if you want to know more information, you can always click the link and dive into the ZENVEST Discord. I can answer all your questions there. And you can ask me all the questions that you want, of course. So do these weekly. Thanks for joining us for another weekend. Without further ado, let's get into it. During the depths of the 2008-2009 financial crisis, the government stimulated the economy with $232 billion dollars. And over the course of 12 years, the value of the S&P 500 4x'd in value. Economic collapse. What the trigger will be, nobody really knows what the trigger will be. Like, I've been looking at the stock market for, since 2014, studying on what happened in 28, waiting for the crash because looking at how everything was valued, everything was overvalued. You couldn't find anything that was undervalued. It was really hard to do that. And I knew that we were coming up, especially on average, the stock market crashes on average every 10 years, right? So if you look back, right, we had a crash in 2000, 1999, 2000, the tech bubble. Then we had one in 2008, okay, 2008, 2009. And then we had one we had a couple little hiccups here and there, but now we have one in 2020 essentially. So you had an 8 year span, and then you had a 12-year span, which was the longest ever. When's the next one due? Around 2030 sometimes. So around there. So when you look at, if you just follow the trends and you expect it to happen every 10 years, right? And especially when you have an incredible amount of money. Now, if you don't get in the stock market now, you're stupid, first of all. you know, because a lot of millionaires are going to be made this decade just off the stock market. But when we reach the time, what the catalyst is, nobody knows what that catalyst is going to be. But it's going to tip the market and cause it to come tumbling down just like it did in 2020. And when that does in 10 years' time, if not by then it would definitely be the trigger to move over to crypto. Remember, came out right after the financial crisis of 2008. Bitcoin hit the market 2009, and people really wanted into it. It really didn't get media attention until 2017. And so where will Bitcoin be in the next 10 years? Again, when the reserve currency is being deflated, right? And we've seen this time and time again, as with the Roman Empire, their currency was deflated, and their currency was inflated to a point in which it became worthless, and nobody could get money from the bank because it was all loaned out. And we're seeing the same thing over and over again. And the world relies on the trust of America to hold the reserve currency, to hold the value within that reserve currency. But the trust has been broken. The trust has been broken since 1971 when we went off the gold standard. See, what a lot of people don't realize today, especially in finance, is that the United States, first of all, people don't even realize that the reserve currency of the world is the US dollar. But if they realize that, the only reason it became that way is because of World War II, when, the United States was essentially the last to join the war. And because of that, everyone's was, building war machines, and they were building the war machines. They didn't have money. Their factories were bombed. they couldn't build a machine, so they had to buy the machines from somewhere else. Well, the U.S. wasn't getting bombed, but we could build machines, and that's exactly what we were doing. We were selling them to the allies. And well, how did we accept payment for those war machines? Well, it wasn't British pounds. What we were doing was we were accepting payment in gold, right? So at the end of the war, when all was said and done, and the Allies won, and now everyone's economy is in the trash can, we got to start to rebuild, right? So the world turns to the U.S. Say, hey, can we have our gold back? Well, not exactly, because we have all the gold now, and you paired us fairly. So what we're gonna do, what we're gonna do is we're gonna you can use our dollars, and we tied our dollars to the gold, so it's backed by gold. So just tie your currency to our dollars, and it's been like that since the end of the World War. And we've created the terminals, the SWIFT terminals, in which if you want to transfer money from country to country today, you have to use a SWIFT terminal. And see, a lot of people in the United States don't even know that, because a lot of people in the United States never been outside the United States. So, and a lot of people don't know about or care about finance anyway. But the United States has owned and dominated all of the SWIFT terminals, anything to do with money and finance for the past almost 80 years, 100 almost 100 years. So, people just, I don't know, in the back of their minds think the way that things are going to be are going to last forever, and that by history is not the case. So if you look at history, history will tell us if you mess with the money by inflating it, you're going to lose power, and it's going to you will lose power and trust in the currency. And right now, all we have is trust in the currency, and that is on the fast track to being lost real quick. So the world has to look at the next reserve currency, right? And they're already plotting on it. So, so the first thing that you would look at as a reserve currency is, well, you would look at gold, right? Because that's what it has been for thousands of years. The reserve currency and real money has been put into gold, right? And a lot of people don't really understand or know why, Bitcoin would be, how could you trust Bitcoin, right? It's not anything that you can physically touch, right? Well, the truth is, that argument would make sense, but our currency right now is just, it's in the trust of it's paper. It used to be backed by gold, but it's no longer backed by gold. So our trust is purely within this paper, and we keep creating more of it, which is inflating, which is devaluing it. And we can't keep doing that forever. So when during the next economic collapse, which they happen every 10 years, there might be a change in the reserve currency. So looking at gold is what it was before. It hasn't been like that since 1971. You got to start thinking, okay, so in theory, let's think about going back to gold. Okay. First question you want to ask is, why did we go away from gold to begin with? Well, gold is very valuable, right? But in the smallest form, let's say if you make a gold coin. If you make a gold coin today, and the gold coin's worth in US dollars today, it would probably be like $120 for that gold coin, for a gold coin the size of a penny. So you can't exactly take a gold coin the size of a penny, take it to the grocery store and be like, hey, I want to buy these eggs. Well, do you want 120 cartons of eggs? Because that's what it's going to get you. Because, because gold it holds way more value than the US dollar. So you need smaller increments, one. So breaking down, the number one issue with gold is that you can't break it down in smaller increments, right? The number two issue of gold is that, so you couldn't really, they actually, back before the reserve, the Federal Reserve was created back in 1911, they actually made it illegal at some point for an individual to hold gold on them, because they wanted to keep them inside the banks and trade it for those notes that we carry around in our pockets today that says legal tender, right? So the number two reason why not gold is, well, a lot of people don't realize this, but there's a there's an asteroid that was found, a couple decades back, right? I believe the asteroid name is Psyche 16. And the reason why this asteroid is so interesting is because Psyche 16 is not a typical asteroid, a space rock made of just like dust and ice. It has precious metals in this asteroid, and Psyche 16 lies between Mars and Jupiter, right, and within our solar system. Uh, so what they found out was so interesting about Psyche 16 is that because they believe that this rock used to be or was going to be the core of a planet, and then sometime, billions of years ago, was hit by another large rock and threw the crust off of the what would be core. The core was able to cool and harden and turn into an asteroid. But because it was supposed to be the core, uh, all of the precious metals of the planet are created in the core. So now you have this rock that would be a core. It's hardened now, and all of these precious metals essentially are just floating in space. And if you now on this Psyche 16 is iron, copper, gold, platinum, all of these precious metals that we cannot find here on Earth, or nor can we make, are found on this rock. And this rock is floating in space. If we brought it to Earth today, would be worth 10. Yeah. So you heard about it. Yeah, $10 quadrillion exactly. So the thing is, if you were to go out there, right, and let's say bring it to Earth, I don't think that we would ever bring this thing to Earth, right? If you brought something this valuable to Earth, we don't have enough money on Earth to even buy it, you know. But anything that is worth money would immediately devalue, negative 400 times its value as it is currently today, because there'd be so much more of it. That's just how the economy works, you know. Um, so, um, but it's out there, right? And there's a lot of precious metals on that rock. Okay, so interesting enough, right? As I mentioned before, it's sitting between Mars and Jupiter, right? And interestingly enough, it's not here. But let's say for a second, if we were to get those precious metals, because precious metals like gold and cobalt and stuff like that, or they are not, uh, you know, they are not just used for currency, right? So if you look into any of your smart devices, you will be able to find gold because gold is an excellent conductor, right? There's also some precious metals in there like cobalt, which is used for batteries, right? So if you were able to get a large supply of that, because it's extremely hard to mine these kind of things and process them on Earth, but if you could find it on its purest form in this rock in space, and you have total control of that, you don't have to worry about all the channels of mining and trying to dig it here on Earth. You have it in its rarest form and raw, sitting there floating on space, just ready to be retrieved. Now, what's interesting enough is that SpaceX won the contract to actually go and explore this rock, right? Again, SpaceX has the keys to go explore this rock that's sitting just outside of Mars. All right. And also, and it's not news to anyone, what Elon Musk is trying to do is put people on Mars. Now, let's look at it in a realistic sense. Elon Musk is a businessman, right? And, me being a businessman myself, I wouldn't do anything that would not, uh, you know, for my business that essentially doesn't end in a higher bottom line, that does not make money.
So, but at the same time, you cannot say you're doing something, you know, that doesn't have a good purpose behind it. So, let's say you're Elon Musk. If I was Elon Musk and I knew that there's this rock out there that has all these precious minerals on it that I need to boost my business, and I could have, if I just broke off a piece of that rock and bring it back to Earth, I don't have to rely on any other company to deliver my precious metals that I need for my company. So instead, I'm going to send, because I have a space company now, I'm going to send probes out there, collect pieces of this rock, and bring it back to Earth. And I can, to send a one-way trip from Earth to that rock would be a little bit difficult, a lot difficult, because mathematics, and you have to trajectories and supplies and stuff like that, right? You pretty much have to get lucky to do it on one shot. What if you could get a lot closer to that rock? What if you could get a lot closer to a base to that rock? Let's say you could put your base on Mars, right? And it shouldn't be new to anyone that Elon Musk is trying to put people on Mars, right? But you can't sell it to the American public. Be like, hey, I'm trying to put people on Mars so I could go collect minerals for this rock. You put people on Mars to advance the human race, to provide us insurance that makes sure that we don't um, you know destroy this planet, and that's the end of our race. You say something like we're colonizing Mars because that's the human thing to do, and because space exploration, and people could get behind that. So we are going to Mars. We should be there by 2025. We already have probes out there. We already have a mission that is scheduled to launch here for 2022 to go there. But what is the mission behind the mission? And the mission behind the mission, I believe, is collecting precious minerals from Psyche 16, bringing it back to Earth, and using it to create products for us, things that we use here today. Okay, and especially making that a lot cheaper to do because you have so many of these precious metals. Now, how does this relate to finance? Well, as said before, rules of supply and demand. When you have more of something, it's lesser in value, and that's just the rules. That's how supply and demand works. Now, the unique thing with gold is that gold, we can't really create gold. You can't really create gold, right? So, gold has always held its value, and that's why it was always used as a currency. Now, because thousands of years ago, we did not have the ability to just go up in space and grab, an asteroid full of gold. But today, we have the ability to do exactly that. And so we're going to do exactly that, but without crashing our economy. And in order to do that without crashing our economy, um, if our economy was based off gold, well, that would destroy everything in which we hold as precious, right? So, because of that rock, because we're going to mine that, it's going to happen within the next decade. It is going to happen. Because of that, we cannot back our current currency in gold. Plus, it's outdated, right? You can't move it around easily. You can't use small, minute transactions. You can't move gold around the world like you can do all those things with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin, you can transact with someone across the world in a matter of seconds, something that you cannot do with gold. Uh, with Bitcoin, with gold right now, since all the countries, all the governments hold the most amount of gold, and no individual holds the most amount of gold on their own. Any significant point, any significant part of gold to make an impact on any person's economy, the governments run the gold. So because of that, the governments control the gold. The governments control fiat currency, which, if fiat currency is essentially a government's currency. So Japanese yen is fiat currency, US dollars is fiat currency. The countries control that, and they can control it. Since they control it, they can print more. They can make more of it, which is causing this inflationary thing, right? Which is bad for our money. But Bitcoin is the hedge against that, a hedge against government stupidity. You cannot. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. That's all there is, and that's all that will ever be. Currently, there's 18 million in circulation. So, since the governments do not control the Bitcoin, they can regulate it. They can make regulations for the country, like, oh, you're not allowed to buy any, but they cannot control it in itself. But eventually, people will get their hands on it. Transactions will be made, and they can be made in Bitcoin. There's nothing stopping you from saying from me buying something from you and offering to pay you a Bitcoin. If I offered to pay you a Bitcoin, would you accept it? Yes, absolutely, because you know how valuable it can be. Even though that Bitcoin today is so valuable, let's say if you wanted to sell me a pair of shoes, let's call them Jordans, right? Bitcoin today is so valuable that you would sell me the price based on the future value of Bitcoin. So you could sell me, let's say I would say, hey, these shoes are worth $100, right? And I'll say, hey, actually, how about I pay you $80 worth in Bitcoin for those dollars, for those shoes? You'd probably go for it. Yeah, you're taking $20 off, but who knows? 2 months down the line, that $80 could be worth $100. It could be worth $120 because the value of Bitcoin increases with time, which is something that the US dollar does not do, right? So that's how strong Bitcoin can be, right? It can also be broken down into smaller denominations, which are called Satoshis, right? It can, because it is a digital asset, it can be broken down to infinite zeros. As small as the unit that you can make it. I mean, the smallest unit that you can have right now for the US dollar is a penny. You can't get smaller than a penny. But you can go smaller than a penny for Bitcoin, right? You can transact around the world. It has staying power when it comes to value. You cannot make it out of nothing. All of these things are not true for gold, or not true for a US dollar, or any currency that we have now. It is inevitable that we will move to Bitcoin as the reserve currency. It is inevitable. That's why it is so expensive. Well, in our eyes, so expensive as it is today. But today's price is nothing what it's going to be compared to next year at the same time. I did a video on this. It was essentially what the value of Bitcoin would be. So when it was trending, it started going a little parabolic back in January. And it hit, I believe, $41,000 per coin. And it just recently got up there earlier this week, about $40,000 per coin. And with that trajectory, if it stayed on that trajectory, an extremely bullish trajectory, it was scheduled to hit $280,000 by the end of this year. Now, that's an extremely bullish, and I understand, and my calculator actually has this written into the code that is not a realistic trajectory, but a realistic trajectory is more like $150,000, which is extremely, still an incredible amount, So, but it definitely could stay on the trajectory of 280. It could be higher than 280. Who knows? It depends on how bullish they are. Now, one thing is true is that people are buying and holding Bitcoin. And the only reason why anybody would try to get rid of Bitcoin is to sell it for another cryptocurrency. Nobody really wants to turn their Bitcoin into US dollars because we know the US dollars doesn't have staying power as it did back in the 40s and the 50s, right? We're not in the olden times anymore. Times are different now, and you have to change and evolve, or you're gonna get priced out the market, right? So when we're looking at what you would do with Bitcoin, the only thing that you should do right now with Bitcoin is to trade it back and forth with other currencies on its own stock market, which we have, that's exactly what some of these currency apps are. hosting, like the one that I use is Binance, right? Binance, again, is one of those that where you cannot buy directly from your, let's say if your residence is in the state or whatever. But who's to say that let's say if you, honestly, if you started selling stuff online today, you could literally accept all of your payments in cryptocurrency, you know, and that's very possible to do. You could ask a friend, hey, I give you this $100. Why don't you give me $100 in, worth in Bitcoin, and you calculate it out, and that could happen as well. So there will be one day within the next 10, 20 years in which I'd say within the next decade that first it started with currency being valued because that's what's on this exchange right now. The Binance exchange is currency being valued at what it is based off of the price to Bitcoin. And you can also convert that into the price of US dollars or whatever currency that you see it against, right? Today, it's being valued against other currencies. Tomorrow, well, not actually tomorrow, but in the future, it will be used to value assets, such as a piece of a company, or the value of a house, or the value of whatever you want it to value. That is where the future of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is going. That's what makes, because it's on blockchain, because it's using blockchain, and blockchain tracks the value and the ownership of the asset, because you can tie a digital asset assigned to a house, or you can do that to a car, or you can do that to a business. That is where the future of our world, our financial markets, and valuing assets is going. So one of the things that people don't really, I guess, fully understand, well, I don't even really fully understand, but I'll do my best to explain it, is derivatives. So the interesting thing about derivatives is derivatives are being able to value something within using. So a derivative is the valuation of future money that has not been earned yet, in the simplest form. So using derivatives, there's many times more derivatives than there's actually money in the world. And that cannot be tracked and regulated effectively without using something like blockchain. So it's effectively what we have today in the financial market is going to evolve and be valued into the blockchain. And since we already have that, which is the cryptocurrency currently on is valued in blockchain, valued in Bitcoin. Since we already have that tool, it is only natural for it to move there. Okay, so moving on to the other cryptocurrencies. So you have Ethereum, which is slightly different than Bitcoin because Ethereum can be coded. Sure. So I'm not by any means an expert in blockchain, but from what I know, okay. So blockchain is a ledger. It is a way in which we can track the ownership of an asset, be it digital or be it physical, the ownership of an asset, and that ownership of an asset, for this example, we'll use digital currency such as Bitcoin, is moving from one owner to the next owner. Now, owner A has a number assigned to the account, right? And owner B has a number assigned to account, but you don't know who is the owner of account A. You only know the owner of account A has this number, and the owner of account B has this number. So when that transaction occurs between owner A and owner B, when that transaction occurs, that transaction has to be verified Much like in today's world, the closest thing to that is, let's say, Visa. So if you run your credit card, and when you run your credit card strip, that transaction goes into the system, and Visa processes that transaction, talks to your bank and says, "Hey, bank, the owner of account 126 wants to buy X and is requesting money to come from the bank to whatever it is that you're trying to buy." Visa verifies that you're using that transaction. Usually, if it's a debit card, it's a PIN code, and if it's a credit card, it's by signature. And they authorize that transaction to happen, and that transaction occurs. The money comes out of your account, goes into the whoever you're buying the stuff from, and you get that product in return. That's how our transaction happens today. Now, if we were to do it using blockchain and cryptocurrency, very similarly, let's say if you want to exchange X amount of Bitcoin for X amount of Dogecoin, then you would go to the market, which right now, the market, let's say we use Binance again. You would say, "Hey, I want to sell X amount of Bitcoin for X amount of Dogecoin." You put in your order, and instead of Visa coming in authorizing your transaction, what you have is a network of computers which are dedicated to solving a transaction. So, they're dedicated to solving a problem. There's an answer to the problem, and in order to solve the problem, using cryptology, there is only one answer to the problem. So the computer, in basic terms, has to go through, so is the answer to the problem, imagine 49 zeros, and then 1 at the end of that chain of zeros. Is the answer to the problem 49 zeros plus 1? No. Okay. The answer to the problem 49 0 plus 2? No. 49 zeros plus 3? No. And it goes throughout, all the way through all the zeros until you get to the right answer. And once the answer is verified, then the solving computer or network of computers that solves that is rewarded. Now, how are they rewarded is through Bitcoin, right? So in order to solve these math problems, which I gave an extremely simple example of it, it's actually a lot more complicated than that, but just for the purpose of this example, right? Just for the purpose of example, it's extremely hard to solve these math problems, and it takes a lot of an extreme amount of computing power to do so. So Johnny's, MacBook is not exactly going to solve one of these problems on its own, especially faster than the network of miners. The warehouse is full of miners that are dedicated to solving these problems. These huge networks of people that are computing, networking, farming their computers together to solve these problems. You're not going to have that. Little Johnny's not going to be able to beat that computer power. So you're going to, you might be able to contribute to that, and because you could contribute to that, you might be able to get a portion of the rewards, which is if the reward I believe is currently like 14 Bitcoins for the reward. But it takes a lot of computers to do that. So if you're part of a network and your computer used processing power to be part of the solving equation, and all these computers are competing each other to solve that equation, you're going to get a tiny percent of a reward, right? So you get rewarded. It'll be something like 0.0000 whatever Bitcoin, and that gets delivered to your account. Okay. So, and your computer, added along with all the other computers on the network in which you're mining on, are going to receive those rewards as payments, right? And that transaction is verified about every 10 minutes. So when that transaction is verified, it goes it's written onto the ledger, which is able to be viewed from any of the computers on any network. And the reason why Bitcoin is tied to blockchain. The reason why it's so um, revolutionary and so secure is not because nobody can see it. It's because everyone can see it. So if you go on the computer and you try to, let's say somehow, if you're very, technologically inclined, and you go onto the computer and you try to change the ledger, well, um, if 100,000 computers have a copy of the ledger and it's different than your copy of the ledger, well, obviously, what you're doing is false. And so, because 100,000 computers do not agree with your copy of the ledger, that transaction will not be verified in your favor, and you cannot hack and take what is not yours. Right, right. And it's really complicated. I'm not the smartest guy, but in a sense, that's just to explain the basics of it. That's how a transaction occurs, and that's why it's not impossible, but extremely unlikely and extremely hard to hack something like that. Imagine going into a mall, and in the middle of this mall there's a bunch of money sitting in the middle of the mall, and you want to go and take from the pile of money, but everyone in the mall is watching you. It's going to be extremely hard to do that unless you got like, unless you Men in Black and you got a neuralizer and you nuke everybody at the same time. That's not going to happen. So um, so that's why Bitcoin and is so revolutionary, and blockchain is so revolutionary, is because it's secure because of transparency, and that's more than you could say for Visa, because you can't exactly go behind the scenes in Visa, you can't exactly go behind the scenes of the government, and which control the money currently, and say, hey, well, what you're doing here is wrong. You can't do that. But with with Bitcoin, everybody can see everything that's going on, and because of that, uh, that's where the trust is built. So moving on, um, so Ethereum is quite different in a sense than Bitcoin, because unlike the code for Bitcoin, of course, cannot be changed, but Ethereum is much more of a type of currency than Bitcoin is, would be used for a type of currency than Bitcoin is, because Ethereum can be coded to do a certain purpose, such as a smart contract. And what Ethereum can be used for, let's say you have an app that delivers food, right? And you put your app on the Ethereum blockchain, and you say, okay, so I want Ethereum to charge X amount for X kind of food or whatever, right? And you put that on the Ethereum blockchain, and you launch your app. Now, somebody goes on your app, holds a transaction, accepts payment in X, and receives payment in Ethereum, and carries out that entire transaction without the need of a financial party such as Visa to verify that transaction. It all occurs on the app, and all the value is held there locally on the app. And I'm not a developer, but I do talk to some developers, and they are excited about this type of technology, because a lot of things are held locally, and this is very game changing into where this financial world and where we are in now, and where it's going to be completely different. Developers are actually excited to work on this type of technology because they know it's revolutionary, and it's better than the process we have now. Uh, I know that every time I get these annoying ass calls, being a business owner, from people who are trying to sell me products that for verifying transactions, and most of them, will charge maybe 30 cents per transaction, or they'll get a certain percentage of the transaction, and in some cases that might be very high. In the cases of Apple, right? If you buy something on an app, Apple is privy to about 30% of whatever that you're buying from the company that you're buying it from. So that's a huge cut. That's a huge cut that you should be getting. That if you did it simply in like Ethereum, you could keep all the profits for yourself. You know, And so I really believe that this is where the future is going. As far as if I was going to transact something, I wouldn't necessarily do it in Bitcoin. If you think of Bitcoin more like as a reserve currency, as gold, I would do the transacting in Ethereum. It's easier to use. That Ethereum blockchain is made there for you to code and better host those transactions. And because the blocks are verified and at a much quicker pace than at which the blocks of Bitcoin is verified, those transactions actually occur quicker. Okay. And then, of course, did anybody have any questions? We'll talk about Dogecoin. Okay, so Dogecoin is the hottest thing on the market right now, right? And it's hard not to look anywhere in finance. It's hard to look anywhere in finance and not see Dogecoin. Okay. Now, this isn't the first time that Dogecoin has gotten a lot of press and attention. Now, I am absolutely sure by next week, Dogecoin is going to hit peak media attention, and you'll probably see Dogecoin on major news outlets because just last week, it was the Wall Street Bets thing. Of course, they're going to be watching those channels right now, and I cannot scroll past the post without saying Dogecoin. So, is Dogecoin worth it? Okay, so basically, Dogecoin was made as a joke. It's one of the I want to say the crypto OGs. Is one of the original guys. Not original, but it is a split off of Litecoin. It forked from Litecoin years ago, and it was made as a joke. And it's inflationary in nature, totally opposite from Bitcoin, right? In which there'll only be an X supply of Bitcoin. It is different than that. So that is not true for Dogecoin. So Dogecoin creates about 10,000 new coins every minute, right? And that would be the equivalent of saying that the U.S. prints $10,000 every minute, right? And that's a significant amount when you're talking about, trying to hold the value of your currency when you're making 10,000 of it every minute, And again, the rules of supply and demand. When the more something you have, the less it's valued at. So when you're looking at that's what Dogecoin is, right? It is literally the opposite as far as genetic makeup of Bitcoin, right? It was made as a joke. Now, one of the reasons why Dogecoin is so hot is because of its relatively cheap, of what it appears to be its value, right? Or how much it's worth, how much it costs to buy. So currently, I'm looking at Dogecoin. Currently, if you wanted to buy Dogecoin, it's about seven and a half. Last time I checked it. Earlier this week, it was about 3.5, and late last week, the week before, it got up to about 8.5, right? Well, I'm talking about cents, right? So 8.5 cents, right? So right now it's 7.5 cents. Earlier this week was 3.5 cents, and before that it got up to 8.5 cents, right? So, I did a video on this Dogecoin, and it goes against every basic fundamental rule when it comes to finance, when it comes to statistics, when it comes to fundamentals of finance. It's insane. Yeah, it's amusing and it's a joke and it's doing what it's supposed to do. Everybody talk about it. And it's a meme, It goes against every fundamental principle that would tell you that this is a good idea to buy. So why is everybody going crazy over it? Well, a couple reasons why people are going crazy over it. One is celebrity endorsement. Okay, so it was recently endorsed by Elon Musk. He tweets about it all the time. Doge to the moon. Elon Musk is synonymous for trolling people, right? So every time he tweets something, I'm willing to bet that Elon Musk doesn't actually own any Doge. Okay, but every time he tweets something, for it being the richest man in the world, right? And he tweets about Dogecoin, and it goes up a penny or two. You know, he should have a lot more impact than a penny or two, theoretically. So why isn't Dogecoin moving how you would expect it to move? Because here's where I think people's minds lie with Dogecoin. People think that, hey, if I take $50, $100, and I buy, because this thing is at right now 7 cents. If I buy, Dogecoin, I'm gonna have tens of thousands of Dogecoin with this $50, $100. And if it runs up to $1, cool, I will sell it before everyone else can sell it. So I'm going to buy at the right time, and I'm going to sell at the right time. And I'm going to be right, and nobody else is going to be right on this but me, right? And if it runs up to $1, it will be, 100 times, worth 100 times, almost 100 times more than what I bought it at. So if I, bought $50 worth of Dogecoin and it goes up to $1, it should flip into, $50,000, or $5,000, something like that. $50,000. It should be $50,000 if it goes up to a dollar, right? Which is a good turnaround. But let's look at the reality of if that happens. How could we make that happen? Okay, so we'll use the $1 amount as a target. Okay, and in order to find out what we need to do let's get Dogecoin to $1. Okay, what do we need to do to get Dogecoin to $1? So I mathed this out last week, and what I did was I compared Bitcoin market cap to Dogecoin market cap, and Bitcoin circulation supply to Dogecoin circulation supply. And this is all public information. You're able to see it, right? And at the time that I did the math originally, this is on the last video as well. At the time that I did the math originally, it would tell you that in order to get Dogecoin to, or let's take the market cap of Bitcoin. The market cap of Bitcoin at the time that I did the math last week was $632 billion, right? And we want to get Dogecoin up there. If you ask somebody what they think that if Dogecoin got as popular as Bitcoin, if you ask somebody what that price would be, they'd probably tell you if Dogecoin got as popular as Bitcoin, what would the price of Dogecoin be? They'd probably tell you $100 to like $300 something dollars, right? Higher, much higher than it is right now, but not that high in general, right? But and the reality is, just so I could bring you reality perception, if Dogecoin were to get as popular as Bitcoin, in order to do that, you need to divide the circulation supply of Dogecoin by the market cap of Bitcoin. If Dogecoin were to get as popular as Bitcoin, the highest price that it would reach is $4.93, which is significantly lower than to $100 to $300 that you would expect it to be. If it got as popular as, for it to reach $300, it would have to be many, many, many times more popular than Bitcoin. And what's the probability of that happening? Probably not that high. Yeah, it's extremely low. Okay, so let's just get it up to 1/5 of Bitcoin. All right, 1/5 of $5, which is $1. Okay, because we want to go for $1, right? If we want to go for $1, and we divide 0.25 by essentially or 0.20 by the market cap of where it is Bitcoin, if it were to get as popular as Bitcoin. If we just wanted 1/5 of that, it would equal $1, which would bring our Dogecoin supply market cap to $151 billion, right? And when I did the math for this, the market cap for Dogecoin was at $3 billion, right? And so it would have to be many, many times more people piling into it in order to get up to $151 billion, right? Or at least a lot of people, or a few amount of people, just a shitload of money just throw away in order to get up to $1, okay? And just to show you the perception of that, if what that would take. If you were to take, in order to get to a market cap of $151 billion, I took the number of people that are on Wall Street Bets today, which are the people most likely to invest a shit ton of money into something stupid like Dogecoin. Yeah, I took the people that are on Wall Street Bets today, which is 8.5 million, and you divide that by the predicted market cap, which is 151 billion. Yeah, you're right. Twitter too. Okay, so okay. For right now, I'm just gonna look at Dogecoin. Right. If we take 8.5 million, which is the population of New York, and divide that by the circulation supply, everyone on Wall Street Bets would need to invest about $17,856 in order to get it to $151 billion. Okay, that's the population of New York. Do you think that the population of a population size of New York will be willing to spend $17,000 on Dogecoin when that when the average person, the average transaction amount for Dogecoin is $75? Do you think that we could get that up to 17,000? So, could it happen? Yes. The probability of it happening is very unlikely. But you never know, on the marketing side, you never know the power of the people, right? So, when I first did the math, what's up? So we make new Dogecoin like essentially every minute, like 10,000 new Dogecoin every minute. So that increases this market supply. So, and which exactly. So let's say, because when I did the math, the market cap of Dogecoin was $3.5 billion. Today, the market cap of Dogecoin is triple that amount. It's $9 billion. So three times more people got into Dogecoin between last week and this week, which is incredible. Now, so why didn't it affect the price in the same way? Because if three times more people, if at $3.5 billion, Dogecoin was worth about 8.5 cents each, then why isn't three times that amount worth 26 cents each? Because that's where it should be at. The reason why it's not at 26 cents is because the supply is so high. It's three times the amount now. Dogecoin should be, if we had zero Dogecoin added since last week, Dogecoin today would be at 26 cents, but it's not because of how much supply is added every minute. Instead, it's sitting around 7.5. It's actually smaller than it was a week ago when it should be three times higher because of the supply. And it's literally killing itself. Can you change that? Well, if you change that, you couldn't verify the transactions, and if you can't verify the transactions, nobody's going to mine it, and you can't move it anyway. Well, don't totally knock it out. Like, there will be times, because it trades in swings, and it'll get popular and it will get unpopular. It will get popular and it goes in swings. So right now, I believe that the floor for Bitcoin, if you bought it this week, it will change by next week. So if you're watching this in the future, don't do this. But I believe the floor for this week will be about 3.5 cents. It won't drop below because you have a lot of support around that 3.5 cent mark for Dogecoin. If it drops to 3.5 cents next week, I would say buy it for sure. And if it runs up past 6 cents, then sell it. It's an easy way. It's an easy 100% game, So take it, but do not invest in this for the long term because it eats against itself, and it's just you can get as many degenerates as you can with a bunch of money to just throw at this, but the inflation, just like the U.S. dollar, the inflation just fights against itself and becoming stronger because it should become stronger with all this popularity that it's doing right now. But it's just not, because that's just not how it was designed. I would love for Dogecoin to succeed because I've never seen this kind of push, but that's just not how. you don't necessarily have to sit on the sideline, but do not sell your car, your house, throw it on Dogecoin like it's going to run up to $100 because it's not. It was never going to do that, and so just mathematically, unless something totally changed, unless they got rid of half the Dogecoin and decided not to create any more, then it could blow up. Now, don't get me wrong. The other week I did. I put, I sold like half my Bitcoin, threw it on Dogecoin, left it there for literally an hour, turned it to $400, took my money back, put it back in Bitcoin, and it's a quick, easy flip, But I kind of feel bad about that because I know I took the money from somewhere else. That's how that works, But you gotta know. You gotta know when to get out, when to get in, when to get out, and that's just how the market works.
Thanks again, millionaires, for another call, making it all the way through. I know it was an hour long, but if you liked it, just don't forget to like and subscribe, and leave a comment. Let me know what you think so we can improve these videos for you. Drop another comment and let me know what you want to see another topic on. Don't forget to jump into ZENVEST Discord if you want to see more, if you want to talk to me. That's where I'm at. I'm going to put that in the link below. And I'll see you in the next video.